Looks can be deceiving, so don't assume someone who seems mild-mannered is easily bullied. At midnight, a group of hooligans went out to cause trouble. They drove recklessly, crashing into the roadside guardrails. Then they cornered a bus, forcing it to stop suddenly. The abrupt braking nearly threw the passenger who was sitting in the back row out of his seat. At this point, the gangsters got out of the car and, seeing a beautiful girl on the bus, "Looks like we've got some fun tonight." The 5 thugs began pounding on the bus door. Terrified, the driver opened the door and they quickly boarded. The man stayed quietly seated and observing. His injury revealed he was not an ordinary person. When the thugs entered, one knocked a passenger's book to the floor. As the passenger bent to retrieve it, a thug stepped on it. Though taller than the thug with braided hair, he could only endure and leave the bus due to their numbers. The thugs surrounded the girl, making remarks about her appearance, saying she looked very attractive. As they were about to make a move on her, the man stood up and walked through the crowd. The girl gave him a pleading look as the man walked to the driver, took his phone, and told her to get off the bus. He then told the driver not to call the police and locked the doors. The man stayed on the bus, ready to stand up for what was right. He stared at the thugs, who had also noticed him. "Old man, what are you still doing here?" At that moment, the man pulled out a gun and emptied all the bullets. "I want to make all of you pay." The thugs laughed heartily at this. A thug with braided hair approached him, and the fight began. The thug punched the man, knocking him to the ground as the others laughed. The man threw a punch but was hit several more times and slammed into the bus pole. What they didn't realize was that this only fueled his fighting spirit to the max. He was no pushover. He shouted, shoved one thug down and delivered a powerful punch. Another thug tried to sneak up from behind, but he immediately countered with an elbow strike. A different thug attempted to hit him with a bottle, but he grabbed it and slammed it into the head of the thug behind him. He then delivered a strong slap, shattering the bottle. The thug still wouldn't back down. He pulled one thug to the bus pole, slammed his head into it, and held his neck while kicking another thug away. At that moment, the blonde thug stabbed the man. He gritted his teeth and punched him in the face. Another thug had his arm forced against the bus pole and twisted, causing him to cry out in pain. The fight continued as the man grabbed the heads of 2 thugs. Taking advantage, the braided thug kicked him, sending him onto the seats. Round 1 ended with the thugs badly hurt. Round 2 began. The man removed his watch, wrapped it around his fist, and pulled out the knife from his side. He stabbed one thug in the thigh, kicked him, and then wrapped a rope around another thug's neck. However skilled he was, the man was now older and no longer as strong as a younger man. Consequently, he was thrown out of the bus window by the thugs. The thugs thought the fight was over, but it wasn't up to them, it was up to him. He stood up, limping as he opened the bus door and got back on. Round 3 began. Using a seatbelt, he secured a knife to his hand and charged at his opponents, stabbing them repeatedly. Within a few minutes, he had taken down 3 of the thugs, leaving them neatly incapacitated. As the man dealt with the 4th thug, he noticed the most cowardly one picking up and loading a gun. Unfazed, the man broke a bus pole and advanced on him, delivering a powerful blow followed by several more to the thug's head. With the gang defeated, the man emerged victorious and found the blonde thug gasping on the ground, likely due to a crushed windpipe. The man quickly rushed to give him first aid. He made an incision in his throat and inserted a straw, saving his life. Then, limping, he disappeared into the dark night. Peace had been restored. These thugs would no longer be able to go out and cause trouble again. When the man got home, he found his wife waiting for him. Seeing him covered in blood, she calmly bandaged his wounds. The next morning, he was full of energy, waking up early to exercise. Just how powerful is he, and who exactly is he? He is Hutch, a dry but loving family man. He wakes up early for work, comes straight home afterward, never stops by bars or parties. He has no issues with the neighbors, no arguments or drama. You could say Hutch is living the peaceful life he always wanted. However, fate has a way of testing us. One night, while asleep, Hutch heard a strange noise. It turned out 2 uninvited guests had snuck into the house. He quietly grabbed a golf club for protection and called the police. But before help could arrive, the thieves spotted him and pointed a gun in his direction. The thieves quickly seized the loose change in the house and even begged for the homeowner's wristwatch. As they took the watch, Hutch noticed a strange tattoo on one of the thief's arms. At that moment, his son suddenly charged down the stairs and attacked one of the robbers. Hutch swung his bat, but soon realized that his gun was out of bullets. Hutch told his son to back off and let the thieves go, not wanting things to escalate. His son, frustrated, stood up and saw him as a weak father. When the police arrived to inspect the scene, one of the officers sarcastically remarked, "If it were my family, I wouldn't have let them get away." The next morning, his wealthy neighbor mocked him, calling him both poor and cowardly. At work, his obnoxious brother-in-law handed him a gun, saying, "Make sure to protect my sister better next time." Hutch took the gun home and tossed it into the fridge. Was it really wrong to want a peaceful life? That evening, as they sat down for dinner, his daughter mentioned that her cat bracelet from the key dish was missing. Upon hearing this, Hutch's anger surged. "Mess with me, fine. But touch my kids, and it's game over." Hutch went to his father's house to borrow a few things, including an old FBI badge and a revolver. He then visited tattoo shops, one by one, searching for clues. The only lead he had was the tattoo he'd seen on the thief. The tattoo shop owner seemed tough, threatening Hutch and sending people his way. But Hutch, not wanting a fight, offered money for information. Suddenly, one of the thugs nearby noticed the tattoo on Hutch's arm, panicked, and hurriedly locked the door behind him. The owner, now as meek as a puppy, asked, "How can I help you, sir?" Hutch pointed to the tattoo in the photo and said, "Help me find this person." The two thieves from the night before, a young couple, were chatting happily when Hutch burst in and smashed the butt of his gun into their faces, drawing blood. He retrieved his watch and threatened them to return his daughter's bracelet. The thief claimed he hadn't seen it. Hutch then threw him to the ground, aimed his gun, and prepared to shoot. Suddenly, the sound of a baby crying came from the room. Hutch entered the bedroom and found an infant wearing an oxygen mask. It turned out that the couple had been driven to desperate measures by their circumstances. Hutch let them go but was consumed by rage, punching the wall violently, feeling useless for not retrieving his daughter's bracelet. He struggled to control his anger and took a bus home with his hands bleeding. That's when he encountered the same thugs from earlier. Single-handedly, he took down all five and walked away proudly. Unfortunately, the young thug was actually the brother of a Russian mafia boss. Upon receiving the news, Yulian rushed to the hospital and found his brother severely incapacitated. Enraged, he grabbed a chair and hurled it at the man who was responsible for his brother's condition. "Who did this to my brother?" Yulian demanded. When he learned it was an old man, his rage intensified, and he continued to beat the man mercilessly. Nearby, one of the thugs, terrified, pulled out the bus card that Hutch had dropped. Yulian hacked into the city's management system for more information. He discovered that Hutch's father was an FBI agent, while Hutch himself appeared to be an ordinary man with no notable reputation. Not believing this, Yulian used his connections with the authorities to continue the investigation, but the results were blocked. Finally, they found Hutch's information in a top-secret file storage. However, most of the text was redacted, and there were numerous graphic images from a covert operation. The subordinate, realizing the gravity of the situation, panicked and quickly fled, leaving behind all the documents related to Hutch and running off without claiming her payment. But the mafia boss wasn't afraid of guns. He ordered his men to capture Hutch alive. At the same time, Hutch realized he was in danger. He went to see a friend known as the Barber, who handed him a dossier on Yulian, a man with both money and power. Currently, he was the most powerful mafia boss in Russia. Yet Hutch remained calm, simply stating that meant he was the bad guy. He planned to move his family abroad for safety, but before he could prepare, the assassins arrived at his doorstep. Sensing the imminent danger, he quickly led his wife and two children to the basement, instructing his wife not to call the police. He then cut the power to prepare for a fight. Armed with a baseball bat, he launched a surprise attack, catching the assassins off guard. Before they could react, the assassins found themselves facing their end. However, Hutch wasn't invincible. In a moment of carelessness, he was stunned with a taser and then placed in the trunk of a car, to be delivered to their boss. When Hutch woke up, he found himself handcuffed. Without hesitation, he broke his thumb to escape the cuffs. Hutch grabbed the fire extinguisher from the trunk, pulled the safety pin, then crawled into the back compartment of the car and said, "Surprise?" White smoke quickly filled the car, causing the driver to lose control and crash into a lamp post. Luckily, he survived and slowly crawled out of the car. The first thing he did was head back home to rescue his wife and kids. Seeing the pile of mafia bodies in front of him, Hutch, choked with emotion, began to talk about his past. He used to be an auditor for the Federal Bureau, but instead of auditing money, he was responsible for monitoring dangerous organizations around the world. He didn't have the authority to make arrests, so every operation he conducted left no survivors. In other words, he was essentially a government-sanctioned assassin. Wanting to leave that life behind, he retired to live a normal life like everyone else. To ensure his family's safety, he sent them ahead and stayed behind to set the place on fire, destroying all evidence. At this moment, the mafia had found Hutch's father's house. One of them aimed a gun to kill the old man, but to their surprise, he quickly woke up and sent two of them straight to hell. The sound of gunfire drew the attention of the fat nurse who was on duty. When he opened the door, he thought the old man was just watching TV too loudly. Truly like father like son, if the father is formidable, so is the son. On the other side, Hutch cut steel bars and put them into a launch tube, modified the grenades to fit into mouse traps, mixed nails with explosives to create a special bomb, and finally placed a bunch of grenades under the stairs. His goal in setting up all these traps was to make a final stand against the mafia right here. Hutch stormed into Julian's vault alone with a submachine gun, swiftly taking out his henchmen. Next, he poured gasoline into the sprinkler system and let it flow directly onto the pile of money in the vault. In no time, he turned the mountain of cash into ashes. After cleaning out Julian's hideout, Hutch went to the bar to confront him. Seeing Hutch enjoying a steak and swaying to the music, Julian signaled his henchmen to surround him. Unfazed, Hutch wiped his mouth with a napkin and flashed a confident grin. "Go ahead and mark this day as your anniversary next year if you want." Hutch's nonchalant attitude made Julian sweat as he dismissed his henchmen to speak privately. Hutch then pulled out a stack of burned money and said, "I turned your money into gold and sent it to those in the afterlife." Despite his fury, Julian couldn't act because of the bomb still in front of him. He was left helplessly watching as Hutch drove away. Julian fired a shot in frustration, but missed. He then ordered his henchmen to immediately give chase. "I'd rather be a dog than let you get away." Instantly, a thrilling chase ensued, just like in an action movie. What Hutch didn't expect was that ahead, his enemies were waiting. It turned out that the crime lord's brother had driven directly into Hutch's car. A hail of bullets pounded the unfortunate car. Spotting a turn ahead, Hutch swerved sharply and accelerated, trying to lead his pursuers to the warehouse he had rigged with numerous traps. But before he could get inside, the crime boss and his men arrived, unleashing a relentless barrage of bullets. Hutch was left taking cover behind the truck, praying for a miracle. Just as things seemed dire, his old team and father arrived to save the day. Despite his age, the old man was still a formidable fighter. It had been a while since he'd used a gun, and his excitement was evident. The three worked together like a professional team, attacking and supporting each other. The black man excelled at both long-range sniping and close combat skills. The attackers were caught off guard by the traps Hutch had set up everywhere. Every time they stumbled upon one, it would explode, sending guts and organs flying. The old man took out enemies with every shot. His son, not to be outdone, shot and lured foes into traps. He set fire to the tripwires, triggering a series of traps that eliminated several enemies. When he noticed someone closing in, he used his preloaded gun to quickly take them out. It was unclear where the director had found these mafia goons, but they kept coming no matter how many were taken out. After all the fighting, the three ended up together. With only the mob boss left and their guns out of ammo, he picked up a weapon and went on a rampage to vent his frustration. In a desperate move, Hutch taped a bomb to a piece of glass to use as a shield and charged at the villain, intending to take them both out. The bomb exploded, sending both flying, with Julian blown apart. The entire mafia group was wiped out. When Hutch woke up, he embraced his father and longtime teammate. He then called his wife to assure her of his safety and hugged his little cat. He prepared a can of cat food and a can opener, and even brought along the mafia boss's prized painting to the police station for surrender. In the interrogation room, Hutch smoked a cigarette, calmly opened the cat food, and petted his cat. The police were astonished and asked him who he was. He said he was just a nobody, but the police didn't believe him. Then, their phone rang, and their superior spoke up. As a result, Hutch was released. He went back to living his life as a nobody. The movie ends here. Do you think there will be a sequel to this movie? Feel free to leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.